Hey y'all, I'm April.
And I'm Caroline.
And this
is your Bloody Happy Hour.
Caroline, are you ready for this?
This is your newest guilty pleasure.
It's the bloodiest part of your week.
Did we say something about it also being happy hour?
Show did.
Because we about to be sipping on some murder. Bloody Happy Hour.
Hey y'all, this is April.
Hey, it's Caroline.
This is Thursday.
On Tuesday?
It is.
It's Thursday.
What is today? It is Thursday. You confused me.
I tried to.
She tried to, and she did. We have a special guest in the studio, and he is actually with us and not on the phone.
Live in person.
Yeah. Introduce yourself.
Hi, my name's Matt Cawthon. I'm a retired Texas Ranger.
That is not a baseball player, just so you, in case you, I know.
I'm the other one.
I really think I'm
I'm the
funny.
poor one.
The more important one. Caroline would be the only one to think that.
No, I'm special. I have special qualities, so that's the only thing. Yeah.
So Caroline and Matt are bestest friends.
We're best friends as of like a whole week. Fist bump.
Fist bump. They got a special handshake and everything. So Caroline invited him on. He was a big part of the Matt Baker case. So I'm going to let Caroline.
Well, so the big part we talked about it, but obviously you were involved in it. But as far as, tell us first of all your career. How long have you been? I mean, you're retired from it now, but as far as Texas Rangers, how long were you a part of that?
Well, of course, I began my law enforcement career in the Texas Department of Public Safety as a highway patrolman, and then I went into criminal intelligence, and back in the 90s, criminal intelligence did a lot of gathering information about crime syndicates, working a lot of vice-type crimes. I did that for 3 years and then promoted again into the Texas Rangers, where I spent the next 17 years. Now, that's 17 years of being an actual Ranger doing investigations. I was never a ranking officer. I was never administrator. I was always in the field working.
So are you basically Chuck Norris?
I am basically Chuck Norris.
Okay, that's what I gathered.
I'm not even as old as Chuck Norris.
Oh, man, I knew you were impressive. Okay, so as far as we talked about you for the Matt Baker case, and so Hewitt Police Department was involved in the case, kind of, sort of, not really. How did they go about involving Texas Rangers? How do you get involved? How do you your group get pulled into it, and what was your role?
Well, first of all, let's talk about Carrie and her mother, Linda Doolin.
Yes.
Linda Doolin, very courageous woman, very tenacious in her belief that her daughter did not kill herself. She had every reason in the world to live. And she could not get the satisfaction she needed. So she actually contacted some friends of mine who were all former law enforcement. And I had worked with them in the past on several different cases. And they began helping her by doing a lot of the legwork, a lot of what just looked like good circumstantial evidence. And every time they turned over another leaf, there was another clue and another affirmation that Carrie did not kill herself.
Wow.
And so then at that point, they're like, hey, friend, we know that you can pull some strings that we can't, or?
Well, what happens in these cases when private citizens or private investigators in this case, they get to a certain point, and when this becomes more than just a civil matter, more than just what is normal for private investigators, they really can use the help of law enforcement. But what do they do when law enforcement doesn't listen to them? They contact the Texas Rangers.
Okay.
So it's okay. How does the Texas Rangers rank? Is there like, I think of
The hierarchy.
Yeah,
Are
I'm
you
thinking
the
of
principal over the police?
No, I think of this as
if I'm thinking of like South Carolina, because I was thinking the Murdoch cases, and I was like there's SLED.
SLED,
So is
outstanding organization.
Is
I've
that
worked with them.
Okay? So would SLED is SLED of South Carolina as Texas Rangers, as is of Texas?
It is a similar comparison.
Okay.
SLED does. They are state policemen who but they may even have in South Carolina original jurisdiction. The Rangers, we do our best work when we're helping other agencies, because let's take a little town out in West Texas. They may not have a murder for 20, 30 years, and then all of a sudden they have something that's what we call a whodunit murder.
Let's take Missy Beavers as a case.
Yeah.
I'm not familiar with that one, but I'd be glad to listen. But when you don't have that type of crime, you cannot get good at it as a local investigator, as a local detective. So when you call in the Texas Rangers, first of all, it's free. I mean, we are state employees. We are there to help. That's what our job is. It doesn't cost the agency a thing. We bring to bear all the resources of the state of Texas, from their laboratories to their analytical services, to the manpower, for everything from aircraft to dive teams, and anything that we have, we can bring it into one case.
So it should be a positive thing, but do you get resistance a lot?
I got resistance a lot, and it's not unusual because egos. Let's just sum it up in police can have can be very territorial at times.
Yeah.
And so, but that's where the value of a Texas Ranger comes in, because a ranger may have to work with a police chief and a sheriff, and they may hate each other. But the ranger has to come in, and he has to walk this line and still get the job done.
Wow.
I know I'm shocking you when I tell you that police have egos.
No. Actually, Detective Terry Fuller,
I know
with
Terry.
Cold Case, came to my book club about 2 weeks ago, and he said the same thing, but on the cold case side. So if there's a cold case and they come and take it over as the cold case unit, the police department has to give up everything and basically pull back. And police departments are a lot of times resistant to do that. It's not working together. It's not a collaborative type thing. It's totally given up. And so sometimes the police departments don't want to do that as well.
The last 3 years of my Ranger career, I was a cold case investigator. That's all I did. Now, I will tell you that in that short period of time before I retired, we were just going after the low-hanging fruit, the actual agencies that actually called us and said, we need help. We have a case. We have, we're stuck. We need a fresh set of eyes on this thing. And that's great. But when you have, when territorialism, becomes problematic, then that's where law enforcement gets stalled.
Okay.
This might be dumb, but if it's cold and the local agency is not working on it, why would they be so don't work on it?
Because if they get it and they solve it, then it makes the police department look bad. You've had it this whole time. Why didn't you solve it?
But let's also not be so hard on local police, because every day that a detective in a police department, let's say a big city police department, comes to work, he's got another stack of cases from the night before. And if he has a cold case sitting over here and he has all these cases, it's hard for them to balance this.
Oh, yeah.
And there's just so many hours in a day that they can work. So I'm never hard on these guys. And I always try to come in and just let them know, hey, we're here to help. We're not taking this away from you. And if we have some success, you and your chief or you and your sheriff can stand up in front of the cameras and you can say what you want to say, thank us if you want to thank us, or if you don't. The Rangers never step in and try to take the spotlight.
Okay. Nice.
Love it. Do you keep in touch or know how the going back to the Doolins, are they still in town, or are they? Well,
yeah, and I don't know where Linda lives, but coincidentally, in today's edition of the Waco Tribune Herald, she wrote a very nice letter to the editor about me today.
Wow.
And y'all are welcome to look at it.
Wow, we will. Y'all go check that out in the Waco Trib.
Hey, that's
Perfect
awesome.
timing.
Cool. What else? Which one's next? Gentry?
Sure.
Okay. I don't know much about this. Can you just tell us, okay, this is another big Waco case.
Yeah.
It's come up recently, like,
Why is it?
you
Why
said
is it in
something
the
about
news right now?
some people from True TV came to you about it recently, and then we had another person who does a podcast here. They were talking about it with a lady from CNN.
Mm-hmm.
So it seems to have come up recently.
For some reason, these true crime type television shows about women who kill is kind of a special niche of investigative type shows, and that's what happened here. A very sad case, but we were assisting a local police agency, the Robinson Police. Great guys over there. They check their egos at the door, and we check ours, and we all work together. And this is one of the stellar example of what police can do when they work together.
Okay.
I'll tell you about a part of that. One of the detectives for the Robinson Police Department, Mike Noel, hardworking, smart young man, and Darlene Gentry was a nurse, and of course, the investigation revealed that she had murdered her husband. She was convicted of that. But one of the things she did is that the shell casing from the weapon, she put on a surgical glove. Now, think about how a nurse picks up something that she doesn't want to touch or he doesn't want to touch. They pick it up, they turn their glove inside out and drop it in the trash. Mm-hmm. So in this case, that's what happened. She put it in the kitchen trash, but before she did, she poured a whole pan of hamburger helper to cover it up. And Mike,
whose job Mike had to do that.
He got hungry.
Mike dug through the muck and he found this very key piece of evidence. Wow! Because when we sent of course, then we had a shell casing, a .22 caliber shell casing, and what we then had, it was inside a glove that was turned inside out, and so now on the outside of the glove was
fingerprints, DNA.
And that was
now. You had to have the gun to match it to it, right?
Well, now we didn't have it at that point.
Mm-hmm. So she tried to buy land
in kind of near Axtell, yeah.
Okay. And it had land. She wanted like a pond or something, right?
It had a pond on it.
Had a pond on it. She wanted it drained.
Well, she said she told the landowner, my husband before he died, he always wanted our children to have a place to fish. Yeah. And the landowner says, it's for sale, lady. It's not, he probably said it's not on sale, but it is for sale. Mm-hmm. And so they were going to work out a deal. And at some point later, she comes back to him and says, I still want the land, but I want you to fill in that tank, that pond.
Oh, yeah, with dirt.
Who does that? Nobody in Texas.
Nobody does not. Yeah.
Ponds are like gold in Texas, in a drought. And so it just didn't make sense even to the landowner. So he came to law enforcement and said, hey, that lady that was arrested for
DTF
for killing her husband, she wants to buy my property. She wanted a pond, and now she says she wants it filled in. And little light bulbs are going over our heads going, that's a clue.
Wow.
And even he said, you reckon she threw something in that pond? I said, well, I happen to know where a dive team is, and we can find out.
Wow.
So they didn't even have to put on their dive gear. They just waded out into the pond, and they found a pristine .22 caliber pistol. Hadn't been there very long. Uh-huh. And so now, again, this sounds simple, but it was not that simple. Because we ran into resistance from the district attorney's office because they said, she's been arrested. She has an attorney. We can't communicate with her. I said, okay. Well, she communicated with the landowner. She wants that pond filled in. And I think I'm going to tell the landowner to tell her that he'll be glad to do it for her, but he doesn't want to get his bulldozer stuck, so he's going to drain the pond first. Put a pump in it and drain it.
Oh yeah. Okay.
And then we didn't ask for any information from her. We didn't ask for any incriminating statements. She already knew what her rights were. She was going about her business. So he told her, and we waited. And we didn't have to wait very long.
And there was game cameras or something up there?
Yes, well, yeah, I had set up a video camera, and I was waiting on her to get there. And of course, we had surveillance units out on the road, and we knew it when she came, and we knew when she was walking down the path towards the pond. And then I simply hit play, and there she is, groping around in this pond for the pistol she threw in there.
Wow.
Which they already had.
And we already had it.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. She couldn't find it. She put on rubber boots. And
I vaguely remember
I'm
that
fly
video.
fishing. I don't know.
No. She was kind of a young and pretty girl at the time, and kind of a Barbie doll looking girl. And of course, she never confessed to her crime, but we believe that it was all over money. And
like insurance
policy.
Okay.
She wanted a different lifestyle, a better lifestyle. Although by many standards, she had a very nice existence. She had a nice house, a nice husband, and beautiful children, and a nice part of Robinson.
Okay. This is kind of off, but a little bit on. If you see an upside down pineapple, what do you think?
I've heard this somewhere. Where have I heard this? It means something.
So it means supposedly that whoever has that are swingers. So I say that because there was a rumor in town that the Gentrys and a bunch of their Robinson friends were actually part of like the swinger district or neighborhood in Robinson. Do you remember any of that coming up during the case?
Well, Caroline, did you ever see them at the meetings or anything?
Listen, we've talked about swingers clubs. I don't have another person to swing with, so I just
she swings alone.
I just swing alone.
You know, I don't know about all that, and you know, I really hate to even talk about things like that because we don't know, and speculating is only going to hurt the family even more. The family's having to live with what's going on.
The loss.
Yeah, the loss of their father, now the loss of their mother who's in prison, hopefully until the hearse backs up to the loading ramp and takes her out. And
there was an appeal in 2020, or she tried, right? But was denied.
Yes.
You think she'll ever get out? No.
I think, didn't Matt Baker he tried to.
In 2022?
In 2020.
Really?
Yeah.
Apparently his request for appeal was denied.
Good.
So.
Wow.
These are sad cases. You know, Carrie Baker's death was senseless. Mr. Gentry's case was senseless. You know, there are other answers. We don't have to kill our spouses. You know, divorce. You know, they could have. You know, don't and you don't think it happens in our little bubbles here in Waco, Texas. We all live in little bubbles, and it's never going to happen to me, and it won't until it does.
Right.
Keep your head on a swivel.
I want to.
We always say, don't trust anybody.
Yeah, true.
Don't trust anybody.
That's what they say in politics too.
Oh my gosh, I can only imagine.
And now a word from our sponsors.
Wait, do you want to tell your story about the case that you were talking about?
Yeah, it's just.
Well, this was another very sad case in that has far-reaching tentacles way beyond Waco, and this involved a young man named Gary Patterson who had been through a nasty divorce with his wife, Chris. Her wife, I can't remember.
It's not the TCU coach.
No.
Okay. Or the former.
No, different Patterson. Gary Patterson was just a hard-working young man here in town, and he had a beautiful 6-year-old girl named Crystal. And his wife was sometimes I entitle this as Married to the Mob. Gary Patterson was married to the mob on this thing, and he always suspected his father-in-law was some sort of bad guy. But as this thing unfolded, we find out just how bad he was. He was an operative, not a card-carrying CIA operative, but probably along the lines of a once or twice removed informant for the CIA back in the 1980s.
Wow.
And what we learned is that the father-in-law is named Sam Urich, and he's also in prison for the rest of his life. He back in the 1980s, he was when he was kind of high roll in it, he was involved in the theft of about 2,000 pounds of C4 explosives that belonged to the U.S. government, and they smuggled it out of the port of Houston to Libya. And the Libyan government then used parts of these explosives to commit acts of terrorism against U.S. soldiers overseas, including the bombing of a disco in Berlin, Germany. And because of this act of terrorism, President Reagan ordered airstrikes on Libya.
Oh, wow.
So we were in this is like an international incident.
Yeah.
All related back to Sam Urich and their operatives, their friends, their colleagues, that they were working with at the time. Now, fast forward back into the 2000s.
Okay.
We were involved in this custody thing with Sam's daughter, and it even got to the point where Sam and the daughter and the mother, the grandmother of the little girl, had interfered with child custody. Gary had custody of the child, and they had snatched her and taken her. Gary had them arrested, and all that was playing out. And when this happened, Sam Urich said, "You know what? I'm taking care of this guy," and he did. He went down to Honduras, and he found one of his old running buddies down there.
Okay.
And he, according to now this fellow ended up confessing to me. And he said that when Sam Urich tells you to do something, you don't cross him or he'll kill you.
Wow.
So he came to the United States. He came to Texas, and he stayed at the Red Roof Inn. And he would go to Gary's work, and he would go by taxi. Now in Waco, Texas, back in this time, not many people went in taxis everywhere they went, right? And so, but he had been to Gary's office so many times that he had then decided that, hey, listen, he would call the office and say, hey, and give a different name every time. But the receptionist recognized his voice, and his name was Ted, by the way.
Okay.
So Ted would call up there and ask for Gary, using a different name, and it kind of got it to be a joke that around the office that hey, Gary, the guy who doesn't want me to know who he is on the line for you.
And where did Gary work then?
A place called Brazos Environmental, which they do site surveys for neighborhoods and things like that.
Okay.
For building neighborhoods. And so, what Ted did, Ted told him that, hey, listen, I like you, and my boss is going to like you. Would you consider moving to El Paso? We're going to do a lot of work in El Paso. Would you consider moving out here, and it will give you a pay raise and a new Suburban? And by the way, here's a one-way ticket. If you want to come out and interview with us, here's a one-way ticket. And if we like you, we'll give you that Suburban to drive back in. Gary thought about it. He even told his parents, said, I don't know about this. This seems a little shady, a little sketchy.
Oh, he felt it.
He felt it, but he went anyway because it was just too good to pass up for him and Crystal, the future of his daughter. So they went out there, and Ted picked him up at the airport, and we were able to. These people are creatures of habit. He stayed at the Red Roof Inn out there too. And funny thing about the Red Roof Inn, if you pay cash, they want your driver's license, and they put a copy of your driver's license in the file folder. So we knew exactly who Ted was.
Good.
He had a South Carolina driver's license. He was wanted by the federal government for a fraud case out in the Carolinas. So we knew who we were looking for. And then when Gary didn't come back from El Paso, we went to El Paso a lot of times, and we found where Ted was staying at the Red Roof Inn out there on the same time that Gary, I mean, it was all falling in place.
He wasn't even a very good.
So we got to the point where the federal prosecutor, Bill Johnson, said, we got enough to get a warrant for Ted Yerk for the murder of Gary Patterson. But it's not enough. It's enough for a warrant, but not enough for a conviction. And he said, Matt, you have to go to Honduras and find this guy.
Oh, hell.
You know, the guy lured him out there. Ted, he'd already gone back to Honduras. He was living down there. And I said, well, and I'm skipping over some of this, but it would take too long. So I said, why? I'm not going to Honduras. He said, you have to go. And I said, so myself and my supervisor, ranger supervisor, Clete Buckaloo, we loaded up and we got on an airplane and we flew to Honduras.
Okay.
And so what we did when we got there is we met with the U.S. Embassy personnel there, and we were assigned 2 really courageous Secret Service agents. You know, Secret Service, they work counterfeiting in all parts of Latin America and Central America. So we're working with these 2 CIA agents. I'm sorry, working with these 2 Secret Service agents. We got with Interpol police from Honduras. Now, Interpol sounds pretty cool, doesn't it?
I've heard it on Criminal Minds.
You've heard it on, you've heard it on James Bond films. Well, it's true. There is an Interpol. Mm-hmm. In this case, it was about 8 armed Hondurans with machine guns riding in the back of a pickup truck. And that was Interpol, all right?
Oh, my gosh.
But,
a movie.
Yeah, this was like a movie. But they were good. Now, Honduras is a country about the size of Texas, and we were looking for a white guy, an American with gray hair. And so we flew into the capital city of of Tegucigalpa.
Okay.
And it is a airport between 2 mountains, and they have to corkscrew the landing, but because they can't approach it.
Oh my.
And when they land, everybody applauds and
because they're still alive.
And you look out the window at the airplanes that didn't make it. They just push them off to the side.
Oh my goodness!
Is this like the main Honduras?
Yes. This is the capital city, of Honduras. So we got lucky with a few things in the fact that that we knew. We had a phone number that Ted was using, right, from Honduras, and in Honduras back in those days, if you own a house or rent a house, the phone number stays with the house. If you leave, that phone number stays. So we were able to track down the location of the house that Ted had lived in. He doesn't live there anymore. That he and his wife, we learned, had moved down to the coastal area of Honduras in a place called San Pedro Sula, another large town. Mm-hmm. So we get in this bulletproof van with the embassy and with Honduran Interpol police and pick up in front of us, and we drive down this mountain to the beach, basically. Now down here, we had heard that he was working in some sort of automotive repair shop. So we were checking out all the automotive repair shops with the Honduran Interpol police. And as we drove past this gate with this tall fence, I saw a glimpse of what I believed was a white man.
White, gray-haired man.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
And so the Interpol police set up surveillance, and the next day we caught him. And it was Ted. And Ted believed that me and the other ranger were a couple of U.S. Marshals there to arrest him on his fraud charges. And I sat there across the table like I am with you in this barracks of a police station, and he started in on this thing about the fraud and this and that, and I'm just shaking my head going, Ted, I'm not here about your fraud. I don't care about your fraud. Here's why I'm here. You came to Waco. You went to the Red Roof Inn. You got in a taxi. You went and talked to Gary Patterson. You gave him a one-way ticket. You met him in El Paso. You took him out into the desert and you murdered him with Ted Urick. And he said, whoa, wait a minute. I did some of that, but I didn't do all of that. I said, you tell me what happened. And I just kind of beat him up with facts. And he finally said, listen, I am not going to take the fall for Ted Urick, because I finally told him, I said, I've got a better case against you than I do Sam Urick, the father-in-law. He said, I'm not going to take the fall for Sam. Here's what happened. And he laid it all out, self-serving as it was. He says he took him out into the desert after he was drunk. He pulled out a .22 pistol and held it on him while Sam tied him up. And Sam told Ted.
So Sam was there.
Sam was there in the desert, yeah.
Okay.
In fact, Ted had told Gary that, hey, we got to go out into the desert to get some soil samples, and then we're going to meet with the CEO.
What?
Gary never left the desert. And,
God.
So we then took, we had to go meet with the cabinet level person in charge of immigration. And we finally worked out a deal that this guy was an American citizen. He was undesirable. They deported him. And I said, where are you going to deport him? We're going to get him out of here. I said, well, can we have him? And they said, sure. So now in the country of Honduras, the local media was accusing us of kidnapping him.
Oh, okay.
We put him on an airplane and we got him out of there as fast as we could. And we flew to Houston and drove back to Waco with Ted Young, the accomplice. And we already had Sam in custody. The U.S. Marshals had arrested him in Las Vegas, and so all this was put together. But before we left Honduras, Ted drew me a very crude map of where they buried that body in the desert. And 2 Waco police detectives and some immigration officials, customs guys, I faxed it to them. They looked at it, and they said, well, it's not much to go on. But they went out into the desert, and they were looking around in the desert and just studying the land. And there's cactus and yucca, and you can picture El Paso sand dunes. But over on this one sand dune was a dead cactus. And they said, that's out of place. Let's start digging right there.
Wow.
And that's where he was. The cactus they had uprooted and put on top of his grave as kind of a last FU, you know.
Yeah, oh my gosh. What was the timeline? Like when he went missing and then
22 months.
Wow.
Yeah, we stayed on that thing for a while.
Wow. You made it seem it was like a Law and Order SVU commercial.
I just felt like
episode.
I was watching an episode.
I know, like you solved it so quick within the hour.
You're gonna have to come back and tell another story.
Within the hour.
Well, I tell people that, you know, we don't catch the smart ones, we only catch the dumb ones. And that
He was real dumb. They were both real dumb.
This was kind of one of those things where I jokingly said that this reference may be a little too old for y'all, but terrorists came to Mayberry and Andy and Barney caught them.
She's pretty old, so she could know.
I know it. My mom used to watch it.
What an evil bunch, though.
Well, yeah. And the thing is, his gut was telling him, poor Gary, the whole time, he knew his father-in-law wasn't good. He probably had a gut about his wife before he married and had a kid with her. And then his gut was telling him that this didn't seem legit. And but then he just had that trust. He had a better heart than all of them did. And all of Sam's kinfolk, from his wife to his daughter to others, they knew what he was doing. And he told them what he was doing. Wow. And now the ex-wife. Did she get some time? She got some time, but she's now dead. She died of cancer. Okay. Her mother, she's also dead. Okay. Died of something. And Sam is still in prison. He's in a federal supermax prison. He'll never get out. And Ted? Ted got 15 years, and he was not happy about that. Okay. And then where did Crystal go? Crystal is she's alive and well. She's married and happy. She ended up living with her paternal grandparents. And
Yeah, Gary's mom and
Oh,
dad.
Gary. Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
And
Good.
they raised her, and it's sad, but it turned out to be probably as good as it could be.
Okay.
And Crystal is I haven't seen her in years, but I was invited to her wedding a couple of years ago.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
It's gonna make me
He really is
cry.
Chuck Norris.
He is
Just
Chuck
have to
Norris.
say.
I've got nothing on Chuck Norris. Can you tell him really quick what you thought all these years with the Texas Ranger Museum here was?
Oh, I thought the Texas Ranger Museum was about the Texas Ranger baseball. But you know what? It's fine. I realized maybe that's why I didn't recognize anybody on those walls.
She was like, I guess I just didn't know any of those players.
These must be the oldest baseball players in the world.
Listen, I've been in there so many times. And I'm like, I just didn't think. I was just like, I didn't know. It was like, look,
I will
Her
say
hair
this
used to be
though:
blonde.
every case that I could come in here and talk to y'all about, it's not something I did by myself. It's always a collaborative effort because everybody pitches in on these things, and law enforcement works best when they work together.
5 minutes, okay. We appreciate it so much. If you could tell us, I know you brought up the Gary case. We brought up Matt. We brought up Darlene. Is there another one that still sits with you that maybe is unsolved, like one of your cold cases that kind of might keep you up at night?
You know, I don't have any that keep me up at night.
we have one for you.
Okay. A cold case that I recall, and that you may even remember, happened a few years ago, maybe 10 or more years ago now. But it was the animal control officer in Belmead who was murdered on duty.
Uh-huh.
That case turned cold, and when I started looking into it,
Uh-huh.
and his name's Bobby Evans, and Bobby was he was their animal control guy, dog catcher,
Mm-hmm.
and he was murdered at the animal shelter when he went to open up the door and feed the animals for the day. Some meth tweakers were out in the bushes, and they were looking for anhydrous ammonia that someone took out there and delivered for them. In their whacked out minds, they saw a man in uniform, and they believed he was police. He was unarmed, and they came up behind him and killed him right in the doorway of the animal shelter.
Wow.
You better be careful. You're about to be living out there.
It was kind of interesting because back then Belmead didn't have a real animal shelter. They had the old concession stand at the abandoned ball fields, and so they had turned the concession stands into their animal shelter.
Uh-huh.
And so he had come out there to feed the animals, and bless his heart, it was just tragic.
Wow.
Again, senseless crimes, and that we think can never happen to us.
Mm-hmm.
But
So did they get sober and tell the story?
no, what I ended up doing was finding one of the more distasteful parts of this job is having to work with criminal informants.
Okay.
And I ended up developing an informant who got us some information that kind of helped it unfold.
Wow.
Kind of like a Leonardo DiCaprio?
On
No.
what?
Like The
Everything's
Departed?
a movie. Oh, like on The Departed.
Oh,
Okay,
yeah.
before we go, I want you to tell us what you're running for, what's going on in your life right now before we wrap this up, and what can we do to help?
Well, I've been retired for a few years now, and once you have the servant's heart, as they call it, it's hard to stop it. An opening came up for a constable in Precinct 4, and I would almost venture to say that nobody in this room besides me even knows what a constable does, and that's okay.
No.
You're the president of the police.
President of the police. What it really boils down to, and to me, is that there are 2 elected law enforcement positions. The rest of them take orders from whomever, the governor or the police chief or whoever, and that is the sheriff and the constable are elected.
Elected, okay.
And so that means that they work for you, and and there should be a relationship with your constable. That if you have problems that are not being addressed, or if you have a problem that you think is best suited for the constable, Or if you just want a little special attention on something, you should feel free to contact your constable, but you can't do that if your constable doesn't have the experience and leadership to handle it.
Okay.
And the mundane job of a constable is to serve civil court papers. And they go around knocking on doors, going to businesses and serving papers. Very mundane, but that's not all that they could do. But they have to have the experience and the leadership to do that. And I have a vision to make the office more professional and maybe even more efficient in their work schedule. I don't think that in this area of McLennan County that there's enough work to keep a constable busy all day long. So I have other ideas. Yeah, I'll give you an example of that is there is a rampant problem out there with scams against the elderly.
Oh, wow.
Our parents, our grandparents are getting, people are calling them and they're losing their life savings. Yeah. And I want an outreach on that. I want to be able to go around to the senior centers and to the churches and maybe put on a presentation for these elderly people, what I call the greatest generation, and then give them the tools they need to resist the silver tongue of the scammers out there.
Wow. So we have to bring you back. We appreciate you so much for coming on. I'm so glad you and Caroline are new best friends.
Well, I'm glad y'all invited me. Thank you very much. Maybe next time my voice won't be so raspy.
Mine is like that all the time. It's okay.
I'm perfect, so it's great.
Is there somewhere our listeners need to go to like your page or follow you? Or
you can go to votemattcawthon.com and you can read about me. I have a Facebook page too for Vote Matt Cawthon, and learn a little bit about me. I've got a lot of experience. I've got a lot of years in training, and I'd like to continue my service to the citizens of McLennan County.
And what's Precinct 4? What area?
Precinct 4, if you think of Moody, McGregor, Crawford, China Spring, Bosqueville, Spiegelville.
Okay. All right.
Perfect.
All right.
Love it.
We're so glad to have you on. And when does the election start?
Early voting starts this coming Monday, Valentine's Day.
Okay.
And the actual election day is March 1st.
Okay.
So it's almost over.
Love
Y'all,
it.
Thank you so much for tuning in. Don't forget to
Chuck Norris's tears cured cancer. Too bad he never cried.
stay aware.
Stay alive.
And always be
DTF
like Matt Cawthon.
Bye.
Have a good one.
This has been a Rogue Media podcast.